Welcome back to LUTE Labs. In this series of videos, we will be covering Ludic Orders and mechanics within LUTE. This includes achievements and inventories. In the next couple of videos, we will discuss achievements. We will look into the achievement prefabs and the required objects that are needed in the scene for achievements to work correctly. We'll take a look at a new order called pop-up menu, which we use to create pause menus in which we can access the achievement list. And then we'll look at how to actually add new achievements to our achievement list and seeing this all come together during the play mode. In the next series of videos, we'll then discuss the inventory, which we'll discuss further when we get to it. Let's jump into the Unity to discuss this further. Okay, so we are back in the Unity editor with a blank scene open, and for this tutorial we're going to take a look at a new prefab, which is the full demo prefab. Unlike the simple prefab, this one includes everything you need to create a fully fledged ludic and more intricate experience, such as achievements, inventories, more in-depth location management, and other kind of aspects which you will need to use the full range of orders. To find this prefab, head to the LUTE Starter Scenes project folder, Games, and then Demo. You can see a full demo just by opening the scene, or you can simply drag the LUTE prefab in brackets full into your scene, which I'll do right now. So if we take a look at our flow engine for this demo prefab, it's looking a little bit more involved than probably other tutorials have been. But don't worry, we're going to take a look at just two nodes for today. The first one being the pause menu and the second one being the achievement list. Now before I go into that, I want to just briefly go over the achievement objects that are required typically when playing when using the achievements in a typical game. So there are three things here in my hierarchy that I'm using currently in this scene. The first one is the most important. That is the LUTE achievement rules, which essentially is the controller for the achievements. It kind of manages adding, unlocking, removing, progressing achievements, and it requires a LUTE achievement list, which we'll look at in the next video in more depth. And then the LUTE achievement signal receiver, which essentially is just listening for events related to achievements and then acting on the LUTE achievement rules accordingly. So these are the two controllers that you really need for achievements to work correctly. The other two aspects are more visual displays. The first one being the LUTE achievement canvas display. What this essentially is when you play games which typically have achievements or quests or missions, when you unlock them, you'll get a notification typically in one of the corners of your screen telling you that you've progressed it or you've completed something, whatever it may be. This is exactly what that is. So all this is doing is essentially showing a UI prefab to the screen and then fading it over time every time an achievement is progressed or unlocked. Now if I show you what that looks like, if I go to the actual prefab I'm using, and then drag it onto my display list here, and then just zoom in a little bit, you can see that if I have multiple of these at a time, you start to maybe find this familiar of what you might be looking at in a typical game which uses this kind of achievement or quest system, where you unlock it and these pop up at the top, the corner of the screen to indicate to the player they've made some progress or unlocked an achievement or completed a quest. So you don't need this in your game, but it's a nice feature to have, and it gives the player a good indication of that they have made progress on an achievement. The second thing is probably more needed. This is the actual list of achievements that are shown to the player, and if I make this visible now, essentially again what this is just a grid layout in Unity, and it listens, this class that's attached here, the achievement list displayer, essentially listens to the achievement rules that we've just discussed previously and then acts accordingly. So it will populate a list of all the achievements that are in the descriptable object list for achievements, and then it will update accordingly whether they are in progress, completed, or incomplete. And I can just show you that now. We can just give you an example of what that might look like. As you can see, it's just a grid layout. So it takes all the achievements in a list and then populates this little canvas into a scrollable window so players understand and can visualize their achievements in runtime. Again, not needed, but it's great really because players want to know what the achievements are in order to complete them. So let's go back to the flow engine and we'll go over those two nodes I discussed at the beginning, the pause menu to begin. Now, when you create a pause menu in LUTE, we often use the pop-up menu order. Now, essentially what a pop-up menu order does is it can take a custom sprite or just use the default sprite and creates a button with that sprite. When you click on that button, a list of other buttons is shown, much like the dialog choice, except we call them menu choices. So if you have a pop-up menu, and then as child of that pop-up menu, you have something called menu choice orders. So essentially what this does is create a button. When you click this button, if there are menu choices underneath this order, it populates a list of buttons with these choices. And the menu choice takes in a text, so the text of the button, and it takes in the target node. So when I click on this button, it will lead to this node. Very much like the dialog choice, but instead we're using it in conjunction with the pop-up menu. So when you click on the menu choice, it then leads to a specific node. In this case, our achievement button will lead to the achievement list node, and that simply shows the achievement list. You can have a custom list, but if you have this full setup in your scene, it will simply display the achievement list to the screen and populate it with the achievement list found in LUTE achievement rules. So let's just take a quick look at that in action now. So we just let all the nodes execute correctly, and pause menu has been executed. A pop-up menu with no custom sprite, so we use this hamburger sprite here. When I click on that, a list, and you can see them reflected from the orders to the game seen here. And if I click achievements, the achievement list that I showed you in the scene view is now seen in the game view. In the next video, we'll discuss actually populating the achievement list so we can add new achievements to this menu, and then how to unlock them and how to progress them. Thanks for watching with LUTE Labs, and I'll see you in the next one.